And it is my joy and my privilege and my honor to introduce my co-host for The Doctor Is In on Wednesday nights on blackdoctor.org, my co-conspirator in all things health equity and in the movement for black women particularly, right? An organization designed to eradicate black breast cancer. I want to introduce at this time Ricky Fairley. She is the CEO of Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance. And she's going to present Black Data Matters.
This is like so awesome. And I would use another adjective to describe it, but I won't in this audience. But this is like awesome. Like, look at this room, right? I have a little cold, so I'm sorry my voice isn't strong, but this is like amazing. And Steph, we probably talked about this a year and a half ago, right? Think about it. A year and a half ago, we said, you know, we have all this research happening. We should get everybody together. And I think this is really a first, really, for 4 organizations to come together and have all this power in the room. I think we had no idea that we would have this power in this room and make these powerful statements. But it's amazing. And you know, I'm only here because of research. And I wasn't in a clinical trial, but I took experimental drugs for TNBC. My doctor gave me 2 years to live with metastatic TNBC and put me on 2 drugs that were experimental at the time, carboplatin and gemcitabine, and I didn't die, and it's 11 years. So this is my purpose, right? But it's all because of science, and we need the science, and we need to advance the science, right? But I think what we're witnessing today is just really, really special, right? It's really, really special, and we have to continue it. But we're clearly making a statement that the status quo is not working. I think you've heard that from everybody that spoke today, that we don't have the drugs that we need for black women, that black women are dying in ridiculous numbers. And I don't want anybody to die of breast cancer, but I at least want mortality rate parity for black women. We deserve it. We deserve better care, better science, better drugs. And from awareness to screening to treatments, the current breast cancer standards of care are not working for black women. Getting a mammogram at age 40 is too late, right? Surgery, you know, even the surgical practices are not appropriate for black women. We need more preventative care. We need different care. We have a different disease, right? And really, everyone, and I think Dr. Lola mentioned this too, everyone in our breast cancer ecosystem needs to be accountable for leveling this playing field. We all have a role here, doctors, researchers, advocacy groups, pharmaceutical companies, but we all have to play a role in being accountable for the fact that we have a 41% higher mortality rate. Something is wrong with that picture, and it has to stop. Right now, we live in a world of health inequity. We don't have health equity, right? And we'll only get to health equity by practicing the golden rule. It's what your mother taught you when you were 2 years old, right? Treat others as you want to be treated. If everybody did that, if everybody just took a moment and thought about, how would I feel in this situation? How would I want to be treated? We would change the landscape of how we think about medicine. We would get rid of racism. We get rid of implicit bias. And that would all go away. If you just think about, close your eyes and think about, what does it feel like? How would I want to be treated in this situation, right? And frankly, and Dr. Fine, everybody said what I was going to say too. I hear you, Tammy. If you think about it, participation in clinical trials for black women should be commensurate, not with the population, but with the burden of disease. So if black women are getting triple-negative breast cancer at 3 times the rate of white women, I'm not smart enough to do that math, but those are the numbers we need to have reflected in the clinical trials for triple-negative breast cancer drugs. I think our mutual goal as a group tonight, I asked Steph last week, I said, okay, when we walk out of this room, what do we want people to walk away with? How do we want people to feel? What do we want them to be thinking? And I think we want to be thinking about a different understanding of how to think about clinical trials and how we think about them, how we conduct research. Right now, what we're doing is not working. Unless you can say, my drug is going to work for black women, or my work is going to affect black women differently, we have to accept that, guess what, our baby is ugly. Sorry about that. But all of our babies are ugly. We're not doing the right things right now. And we have to basically say that our current normal is not working. It has to be done differently. And we have to accept that today, you know, as life as we know it has to be different when we leave this room. And frankly, we are better together. We're all here. We have all this power in this room, and we can do this work. We started our project, our research project, a couple of years ago with my dear friend Allison Tischler, and she passed from triple negative before we could even go into the field. Actually, her funeral was the day of our first focus group. But she helped me design this research. I'm a marketing person by trade, but I wanted to understand from a marketing perspective what was in the brain. You know, I used to always think about what was in the brain of a consumer, what makes them tick. So what was in the brain of a patient, what was making them tick? And Allison helped me design this study. So we had some really great partners. We had breastcancer.org as our financial partner. We had Morehouse School of Medicine, the Center for Healthcare Innovation, Citizen, and we were very blessed to get the Genentech Health Equity Research Grant, so thank you for that, Genentech. And we basically did a pretty huge project, only a part of which I'm going to talk about today. But we did 48 interviews, qualitative interviews, and then we did a quant study of 250 black breasties. So I can only talk about the qualitative today because we're embargoed for the quant study because we're publishing a manuscript which we hope will come out in the next couple of months. But basically, we started with kind of defining, and Dr. Fayand, you helped us do this with our medical advisory board, defining black breast cancer. It's a different disease. We have a different disease than white women, right? And I'm going to read it. Oh, I screwed that up. I'm going to read it to you. Black breast cancer is the constellation of exposures, experiences, and lack of science for black women diagnosed with breast cancer that causes black women to face disproportionately worse outcomes. And it's just that simple, right? We have a different disease, and unless you admit that and start with that, you really can't go anywhere. So we started there. And then our methodology for the focus groups was basically women aged 25 to 70, and we had a variety of women, every phase of breast cancer. We had some caregivers. We had really pretty much, we wanted to represent the whole population, metastatic women and early stage. And so what we learned, the most important thing that we learned, there's a fear of the unknown. What does that mean? That means we don't know anything as black women. When you get diagnosed with breast cancer, who are my survivors in the room? And patients in the room, right? Think about it. When you got diagnosed, when the doctor said, you now have cancer, what did you think? What did you know? Did you know anything? Did you know anything? Like, what did you like, cancer, what? When I got diagnosed, actually, my doctor called me as I was going through security at the airport to get on a flight to California from Boston. And she said, okay, Ricky, you have breast cancer. I said, well, you know, I'm really busy right now. I have to do a speech tomorrow. Can I call you back? Because it went over my head. And we talk to patients every day, and they don't know what to think, right? So it's this fear of the unknown. You're jumping off this cliff that you have no idea what's going to happen next. You have no idea. And you have a lot of faith or just have a lot of support around you. But it's really fear of the unknown. And we learned that, also, when you find out you have breast cancer as a black woman, you have no idea that, guess what? Your mortality is 41% higher than white women. You have no idea what disease you have and how it's different and how you don't have the science to support you. And doctors aren't inviting you to clinical trials. Who got invited to a trial of my survivor friends? Anybody? A few in the room, right? But we aren't invited, right? We don't know what we don't know. And our research actually shows, our quant shows that even when you have the conversation with your doctor about a clinical trial, you still walk away not knowing what you need to know to make a decision or defend that decision to your family, right? We have one survivor friend of ours, and she always says, I don't want the McDonald's drive-through appointment today. I want the Ruth Chris Steakhouse appointment today with the appetizer, the dessert, and everything in between, because we're not getting the time we deserve from doctors. And we know that earned medical mistrust is swirling around in our heads. So all that's going on, right? But then we learned some interesting things. We learned that I'm going to get the sugar pill and die. Who knew? I'm going to get the sugar pill and die. Like that, we heard that resounding from black breasties. They have no idea what standard of care is. No idea that you're going to get, you're going to get a drug that's going to work for you, that you're not going to be left hanging out to dry. Right? I don't want to be a guinea pig. I don't want to be a guinea pig. I don't want to be a science experiment. maybe I'll do research as a last resort. But the lack of knowledge about clinical trials and the science is just under the ground. We just don't know what we don't know. And so we learned that we have to do a lot of education to explain the differences to people. But the level of health illiteracy in the Black community is breeding health inequity. It's breeding it because when you don't know what you don't know, anything could happen to you. Anything could be told to you and you believe it, right? You're in a situation where you're with your doctor, you think your doctor's going to do the right thing by you, but they don't. They don't tell you what you need to know. They don't give you the care that you need to get. And so it's just exacerbating the situation. This is a quote from our research from one of our participants, and I'll just read this. I can't remember the last time. Whenever I would hear clinical trial, I would always think experiment because it was never really broken down to me. I never considered it, and I've never been approached personally to participate. But I know with my former oncologist, I wouldn't say that I trusted him too much. He didn't really answer a lot of my questions. So to me, she touched on everything. The mistrust, the lack of understanding, the lack of knowledge, the fact that she wasn't asked. All of those things, she said it all in that one quote. We also learned that guess who the voice of trust is? The breastie voice. And we heard that because we heard breasties talk to each other about, oh girl, don't do a clinical trial, you're gonna get the sugar pill and die. And when I heard that, I moderated our focus groups. I think Tammy said the same thing because I was such a control freak, I wanted to hear what women said. But when I heard them say that to other breasties, I'm like, oh my God, we're passing along bad information to each other, and we are the voice of trust. And so we have to change that. We have to help people understand that they're saying the wrong thing to each other, right? But that also that the voice we have is important. And we really went into this research, I should have said this earlier, with the intention of doing a campaign, starting a movement, doing a marketing campaign, basically to help people understand. And so we had to start there with the right voice. Another quote from our research, and this clearly validates the breastie voice. I feel like a lot of research is not with Black women. So if I had someone who went through it already, I trust their pain and their feedback. So I want to hear it from my sister. I want to hear it from a breastie. I want to hear it from somebody who had something that I had what I had, right? And I learned pretty quickly in the groups, being a moderator, that I could change somebody's mind in 5 minutes about a clinical trial. I could totally change how they thought about it in 5 minutes. And it basically was very, very simple messaging, explaining what standard of care is. That no, girl, there is no sugar pill in cancer research. This is what's going to happen to you. You're going to get a drug, or you're going to get a better drug. That Advil you took last week, that Tylenol you gave your baby, that heart medicine you gave your dog was in a clinical trial. And they're like, whoa, really? They have no idea. And to Tammy's point early, we tested a message about do it for your daughter, because we're not going to do it for ourselves. You know, we're the last one on the list. You know, we're taking care of everybody, but think about doing it for your daughter. And they're like, yeah, I should do it for my daughter. So either I'll be here for my daughter or I can change my daughter's destiny. And that, guess what? In a clinical trial, you're going to get a better standard of care. You're going to get more attention, more scans. If you started chemo today, you probably wouldn't get a scan for 3 months. If you're in a clinical trial, you'll probably get scanned in a month. You're going to get more supervision, more doctors talking to you, more better health care. And frankly, if you're a Black woman under 40 and you have breast cancer, and if you have triple negative breast cancer, a clinical trial is your best treatment option. It's the best care you can get. And then, you know that iPhone 14 you want, that Tesla you want, all that science you're buying in your house, the biggest TV, the biggest whatever, why wouldn't you buy the best science for your body? And a clinical trial is the best science you can buy. And so with those little messages, they're like, okay, I want to do a clinical trial. Why wouldn't I do it? Why wouldn't I do it? I want to live. I want to live. I want to be here. I want to live. I want to survive this. And if that's going to help me live, I'll do it. And their openness to clinical trials is very, very prevalent if you explain it to them in simple terms from the voice of a breastie. So we designed When We Trial. And we took everything that we learned in our research and we developed our movement called When We Trial, which we launched earlier this year. And we took everything, you know, all the words that we heard from women and breasties and put it into a website where You can find people who look like you, who've had a different experience, who've had a good experience with the trial from somebody that looks like you. And we have a lot of video content now that basically explains what standard of care is, you know, what these things are. I have 1 minute, okay? And so to date, we've basically signed up 5,000 women for clinical trial portals. But we have much more work to do. But we know there's a conversation happening. We've had 55,000 people hit our website. We've talked to 15,000 people at events. We've done 25 events since May 15th. We're on the road pretty much all summer, talking to women where they live, work, play, pray, and slay. We went into the community, we looked them in the eye, and we explained standard of care. We explained very simple terms to them. And I think we've also had 25,000 DACAs views of our clinical trial shows, and we've talked to a lot of people. But there's so much more work to do. If you think about that we only have 3% participation, that 5,000 is a drip in the bucket. And the only way we're going to is to do better, is to scale our movement with all of you guys. I mean, we all need to work together to make this happen. But we're going to continue to challenge the ecosystem. We're going to continue. The patient voice is the one that rules, and I think this is an example of the patient voice speaking, right? Know that your baby is ugly. Our babies are ugly. We have to do differently. We have to act differently, right? And cultural humility is what's going to driving trust and getting people to engage in conversations. And the power of advocacy is in this room. You can see it all around us, right? Let us help you. Frankly, what you do is louder than what you say. We're walking the talk. We're walking the walk, not just talking the talk, right? And guess what? The answers are going to be out of your comfort zone. If you're feeling comfortable and you're feeling good right now, you're not doing the right thing, right? And then lastly, the golden rule is what's going to win. If you wake up and in every decision you make and you think, is this how I want to be treated? Is this how I treat my mom, my grandma, my auntie, my daughter? Then it's the right thing to do. But if it's not, it's not. So thank you for this so much.